Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Board Games Unlocked, and today I'm doing a discussion over Scales of Fate, the second newest two-player game by Ivy Studios. This kind of came hand in hand with Pillars of Fate, which, if I time it correctly, I should have a discussion on Pillars of Fate that you can go check out on my thoughts of that. But this is another game set in their Veiled Fate world. I've never played Veiled Fate, so I have no idea about any of that. But this one I was absolutely intrigued by because it's a concept of like deception, two-player deception games, which the only game that I had ever played that was similar to that is Mantis Falls, which I absolutely love. So because most deduction games typically are large player counts, or they're way better at large player counts, like 4+ players. So whenever you create a game that is designed in that genre for just two, it always kind of piques my interest. And this one is absolutely unique. I think that Ivy Studios kills it at two-player games. Mythic Mischief is one of my favorites. Then you have Pillars of Fate, which, spoilers, I also really enjoy. And then Scales of Fate, which, spoiler, I really enjoy. They are just really clean designs with a lot of uniqueness to them. I mean, just on the sheer, whatever art and overall design is kind of unique. The actual gameplay is not something I've ever really seen before, but you can almost kind of tell it's an Ivy Studio game. And they don't make a lot. They have their small catalog. So, in Scales of Fate, basically how it works is you have a deck of gods. There are 9 cards here. There are 9 they're demigods, whatever. And at the beginning of the game, you shuffle them up. Both players have the exact same deck of cards. And you will take 2 of them, and then the other ones basically kind of get set to the side. And these are your 2 gods that you are trying to get the most points out of. And you get points either by having both of the gods on the renown track, the victory point track, on the same spot, and whatever spot they're on, that's the points you get for them, or the difference between both gods. So that will also be their points. So, for example, if you have one on 10 and another on 5, then you're going to get 5 points at the end of the game. Now, if that was pretty much the game, it would be fine. It would just be alright, because there's positioning matters and using different gods to achieve other gods to modify points and stuff, all that kind of matters. And if it was just, oh hey, I got both mine to 12, you got yours to 10 and 5, I got 12 points, you got 5, that's the end of the game, it'd be kind of whatever. But the fact of the matter is that you are also trying to have your opponent not guess which gods you have, while also you're trying to figure out what theirs are. You have a sheet that you can use to write whatever notes you have. And you might be thinking, well, there's 9 gods, how the hell do you ever figure out what 2 are theirs? And that's where the age cards comes in. So their game lasts 3 ages, similar to Pillars of Fate. And the ages do a couple things. They modify the board layout a little bit. Basically, the first age sets the board, and then the second and third age just kind of change basically the position of 2 tiles, and that's kind of it, and where the action pillars go. But the really cool thing about this game is that each age card gives a condition that gives your opponent some information. And I mean, I have the Kickstarter version, so in age 1, 2, 3, 4, there are 5 age cards, I believe, per age with the Kickstarter edition. So really, if you don't have the Kickstarter edition, you have 3 age cards. And you might be thinking, well, that's not enough. It really is. One, because this game is designed to be quick, like 30 minutes tops. Even the how to play video is like 9 minutes, and that includes setup. So the game is designed to be quick, and each age card, like I said, gives a rule that all players have to answer on what if their demigod meets that condition. So a good example is, in the last game I just played, it was if your demigod was on their own renown space. So you're looking at, in this final scoring here, you take a look, and purple, orange, teal, and green are all on their own space. And you, as a player, have to answer yes or no. And that extra wrinkle is so fascinating because it does such a great job of giving the players information without giving them too much information. And some age cards give better information than others. Like one age card literally says, draw 2 cards from your opponent's deck, look at them, and, now you've done that. So it's not as much potential information, but it's guaranteed info because it's like, oh, I drew yellow and blue. You can't possibly be yellow and blue. So that for sure knocks those 2 out. If you're looking at the example I just gave, where teal, green, orange, and purple are isolated, throughout the course of that age, if you have any suspicions on what it might be, that could be really good info or really bad info. Like, for example, if I, as a player, let's say my 2 colors are purple and pink, I would have to say yes, because purple is isolated. But that's all you would say, is you only ever say yes or no. So to my opponent, they now know one of my gods, potentially both, but they don't know, is teal, green, orange, or purple. And I actually can't remember which one that, I think it's called the Hermit. Okay, yeah, so that is an age, that's an age 2. That's an age 2 condition. So by that point, by age 1, they might have somehow isolated or already had suspicion on a separate color. So those, by saying yes to those 4, that could give them a lot of info. Or, like with some of these, the antithesis of that is even more important. If I say no, then that means both of my gods cannot be teal, green, orange, and purple. So 4 of the gods are just completely out. Because the entire game of Scales of Fate is you manipulating where gods are being positioned, trying to modify their points, trying to screw over your opponent's points. If you see them gaining a big lead on 2 things and you are pretty sure those are their 2 gods, then you need to try and do things to close the gap. Or if you see them buddy up to 2 gods, you might want to start spreading that out, but not too much, because if you can somehow get it to where, let's say, yellow and red are on 9, but then at the end of the game you can pull a swing to put yellow up by 1, their final score is just going to be 1 point. So because you're never fully going to be given all the info, because the game lasts only 3 ages, so you're only going to get 3 conditions that may or may not be helpful, you have to really narrow down who their gods are. And sometimes, while you're also not giving yourself away, because, you share the god pool. So if, for example, like in the last game I just played, the age 3 one said, demigods in the abyss, which the abyss is a section that you can kind of move gods out, almost out of play, but you can somehow give them positive or negative points. If they pop one of your gods in there and you do an action, which is basically god power, to swap that god out, that could be telling. That could be like, oh, I don't want to give myself away, so I'm moving my god out. But you might also do that to make them think that color is your god, and you swap them out. Or you might have a suspicion between 3 gods. You know for sure that their god is pink, but you don't know if their other god is purple or blue. And you could do a swap that puts in purple into the abyss, but you keep blue out of it. And then you put maybe your own god in there, so that hey, one of my gods is mine and the other one isn't, but I think it's theirs. So that at the end of the age, if they say yes, then cool, I know it's red and purple, or cool, I know it's not purple, so I'm pretty sure it's red and blue. That's basically what you're doing the entire game that lasts 30 minutes, and that is setup is super quick. Changing between ages is also insanely quick. Like, this creates a fantastic deduction game in 30, maybe 45 minutes if you are really trying to analyze it. Now, that's kind of the overall shtick. So, how are you gaining points and stuff? Well, it's another really clever system in that each age you get progressively more and more action spots. They're called pillars that you are placing gods on, and they have action abilities. One lets you place a god into the abyss. Well, actually, two of them do by the end of age 3. One lets you modify the abyss scoring thing, which could basically give any gods in the abyss positive or negative points. And again, another way for you to modify your gods or your opponent's gods' points. And then the others give you what are called servants, which basically will trigger the colored quest tokens. Now, this all could just be lore of their Fate series. I have no fucking clue what it actually means. But they call them quests. It's not thematic or in any way to what is actually happening on the game. But basically, there are scorpion and feather tiles, so kind of black and white for the most part, which is also in Pillars of Fate, where there's the scorpion and feathers. But you basically will place servants in a row or column if it's a scorpion or a feather, and you trigger all quests of that row or column, and any gods that are on pillars adjacent to it take that amount of points. So, like, for example, if I placed a scorpion servant in this row of all scorpions, then green is going to be triggered by those, and it's a negative 2 points and a positive, so green actually loses just 1 point. Red is adjacent to 2 negatives, so that red would go down 3 points, and then orange is adjacent to just 1 negative, so orange is going to lose 1 point. And this is at the end of a game of age 3, so there's a lot more gods, a lot more places, because over the course of the game, the ages, there are not as many action spaces, so not as many gods are being affected by points. It's kind of like by the end of it, you have a lot of just changes of victory points where you think you had a really good separation, and then all of a sudden it shrunk or something. But so that's the Scorpion one. The Feather does the exact same thing for the white quest tiles, and then you have the red tokens. They all have names. I don't remember what they're called. Vesper and something else. But the red ones you place on the edge, and they target just that quest tile that they're touching. And there's 2 of those. So that's basically, you place those, and that's going to modify the victory points of the demigods. Then they have another really interesting wrinkle in all of this. In god powers. Now, there are only 3 god powers in the game, and as an action, you can do one of them. One of them lets you steal a servant from another player, which can be useful because you could then take away an action from them and you get to do multiples in a row. You can banish another god, so it works similar to the banish on the action tile, except that you can banish from anywhere, because the banish of the action tile has to be a god that's not in play. The banished god power is not limited to that. It could literally be any god anywhere. It could be a god that was already on the board. It could be god, off the board. That's pretty much it. Those are your 2 options. Or the third god power is swap, where you can swap the location of any 2 gods. Literally doesn't matter where they are. They could be off the board, on the board. They could be in the abyss. You can swap someone off the board in the abyss. You could swap, 2 gods that are on pillars. But the wrinkle to that is, one, they're once per game, not once per age, and they give you a negative 1 point. So they're very powerful. They even try to attack the players. They're very powerful, but it's at a cost. And this game does not have a huge swing in points. I mean, if you're both playing well, like if you are actively watching someone, separate two colors between 14 and 0, then yeah, your score could be, I think at most it could be 17 points because of another way you can score. But yeah, that would be the highest score you could get. And you can go negative. It is possible to get a negative 1 point. Actually, it could be a negative 4 if you did really, really bad. But The god powers are cool. I actually like the fact that there are only 3 of them throughout the course of the game, and because doing those god powers again is a sense of information. But depending on who's using it, it's an information at your strength and also at your detriment. If you make a mistake by using a god power based off the info that you have accidentally given, they could read into that a little bit more than you thought, and then that could give them some info. So the god powers are really cool. The only thing that I'm not quite sure on about this game, now, admittedly, I have not played 100 games of Scales of Fate. This, to me, along with Pillars of Fate, and actually Mantis Falls kind of falls into this, it's not a negative, but it comes with, this is such a simple game to play and teach that it rewards itself by becoming like a difficult game to master almost. And there are a few games that are like that, where it's like it's easy to teach, easy to learn, difficult to master games. And the reason why I'm saying that, the only thing I don't know is there enough in this game that gives opponents or gives the players surefire answers? Because I can see games of this kind of going, because there are potentially 3 to 5 age cards that have vague information conditions that throughout the course of the game you might just be in a position where you're just not gonna get anything. So that by the time by the time the end of the game comes around and you have to guess, you're randomly guessing. So that kind of brings to the end game. There's a point after you do the kind of like the scoring and everything where both players will guess what they think the other person's gods are. If you are correct on both of them, you get 3 points. If you are correct on one of them, you get no points. But if you are incorrect on both, you lose a point. And like I mentioned, this game is typically a series of tight points. So losing a point for being wrong through, I feel like not necessarily a lot of your own fault, is a little bit much. And I'm trying to, and that kind of is where it's like a hesitant negative. Something to be aware of at least, because like I said, there could be chances of age condition cards where it's like, I don't even know how to narrow it down at this point. And like I said, that could just be through you just get that good with repeat plays where you really understand the nuance, or you understand, if you're playing against the same person, the type of actions or strategies that they go for. Similar to like hidden movement games, where it's like, I have no idea where you're at, and I feel like I just am going to keep scrambling. It's a similar feeling, unless you play hidden movement games with the same kind of person that's always hidden. You're going to learn their tropes. Like, spoiler, if you ever play a hidden movement game with me, and I love to hug the edge, it's great. Like, there you go, I tip my hand. You're going to know I do that. But now I know that you know that. And yeah, I know that you know that I do that, so now I'm not going to do that. But then because I know that you know that I'm not going to do that, I am going to do that. It's all about mind games for these style of games, but I can see it kind of be frustrating if you are playing, even if it's a short 30-minute game and you're playing it over and over, that you just never get a pair right. Where it's like, I don't even know how I could have figured out that you were pink. It's like, I knew you were purple, knew that for sure, don't know how I would have ever gotten that you were pink. Because you don't really have to do a whole lot to actually manipulate both of them because of the separation. So through just naturally messing with one of them, like, yeah, I could probably guess that you are yellow, but there's 8 other gods that I have to fuck with to try, well, actually, yeah, that I would have to fuck with to be able to try and modify your score. Because there has been games of this where I knew for a fact that it was that my girlfriend was purple, but I was like, is she black or blue? and then she ended up being teal. And then teal was all the way on like the 4, and it's like, oh, okay, I knew you were purple, but I thought you might have been yellow, so that was only going to be a 4-point difference. But no, you also were teal, so that's 10 points. I don't know how you never messed with teal. And that brings me to my actual negative for this game. I mentioned at the beginning of the game, each person has their own deck of the 9 gods, and that they're shuffled. And then you draw 2. The decks are identical, so it is entirely possible that both players share a god. It's possible that both players share both gods. And I don't know how I feel about that. I know the opposite would be worse, where if the 2 I drew, oh, hey, I drew blue and yellow. I know they can't be this. That is worse, because that basically means there are 9 gods, 2 of which I know for a fact can't be there, so I'm only messing with 7. And because of the answers you do get from age 1, 2, and 3 and stuff, it does actually, like, that would almost give too much info where you're always guessing correctly. So yeah, it's like I'm conflicted about this because it could be very frustrating. Like, now, what are the odds? I don't know. Some mathematician can tell me what the odds are of both players sharing a god. I know it's more unlikely that both players share both gods, but I have had games of this where me and my girlfriend shared a god, and I'm modifying one really low, and so she's moving the other one, and it's like, oh, cool, yeah, I was teal and purple. Great, I was teal and orange. So my spread that I worked on the entire game is less because I was doing all the legwork for one of them and you were just moving the other. And so I don't know how, if there's enough info for you to also be like, oh, we can also share a god. It is kind of a conflicting aspect of this game. So I don't quite know how to work around that. And that could just be a skill issue. That could be just the way the game ended up working out. And even if you don't get it right, then like I said, it's a short game. So it's like, damn. All right, well, we'll just let's set up and play again. And you can. But these games have a tendency to make players feel really dumb if you don't get it, especially in a competitive sense, where it's like, damn, yep, nope, just had no clue you were those 2 gods. And at the end, if you had one such game where one person is doing all the legwork for one god and you're reaping the benefits and you move your god up and you have a big spread, and then you get their god, you're like, oh, I think you're teal and orange, and you're correct and they're not correct back, then it's like, cool, I reaped the benefits of all your work and I also just happened to guess your god, so thanks for the 3 points, and you also lose a point. So it's really a 4-point swing on top of the fact that they already basically gave you your points. So, I don't know. Like, I guess maybe a strategy could be that you do things in such a way that you have them answer yes or no on your own gods, while also not giving your own gods away. Because if you, like the Hermit one, for example, if you were able to isolate, like let's say you had red and black, and they also shared red, like the Hermit one, I guess you could try and isolate red and black, while also, yeah, see, that's where it gets difficult, because that could just be a bad example where you can't isolate your own god and keep their gods isolated, well, to narrow down that, hey, we might share the same god. So, but that could work in the sense that if they do say yes and both of your gods are isolated, like you could, but you can't just isolate both of them. You can't have red and black being the only 2 isolated, because then if they say yes, if you also have to answer. So if I say yes in this scenario, then they could look and be like, oh, you're red and black. Like, you just gave yourself away. But if they also say yes, you don't know if that's both of them, or well, if they say yes, it would be it could I guess theoretically just be one, but yeah, sharing the gods is an interesting decision, and I don't think it's a great system, but I think the opposite is worse. So it's something I can tolerate, but it can be frustrating if it's just like, really? Like, I don't know how I would have ever guessed that. But that was really my only, like, big negative about the game, is the fact that you might share gods. And that could, again, be rectified just by multiple plays, where you start really figuring out the nuance of how to place specific gods, how to figure out how to isolate based off what is the age conditions. So I don't know. I'm very curious on people's thoughts about that aspect of the game. But other than that, the point manipulation is great. The deduction is great. It really does an awesome job of a 2-player deduction game. The production is amazing with the gold cards, and then in my case, which is completely not needed, I have the metal pieces, and they are weighty, they are sexy. But the wooden pieces are just, I mean, honestly, you don't have to get the metal. What would I like to see in the future? So, funny enough, Pillars of Fate, or with Scales of Fate, it actually came with 3 new god powers for Pillars of Fate, which was awesome. The only thing I would like from this game is, which they don't really do expansions. I guess they kind of do a little bit for, like, Moonrakers they did. But I think a mini expansions for the age cards. I think that's the same thing for Pillars of Fate. I think more of the stuff that tweaks it. The quest tiles are perfectly fine. No more gods, because 9 is already a lot to manage. Yeah, you don't need any more gods. You don't need any more tiles, action tiles. That's all clean. That if you add more action tiles, it makes it worse. I think the biggest kicker is how you give the deduction more variety. So more age cards, really, because that also changes the position of the tiles, which again just gives it some more flair. And then they have these notepads that are, I mean, there's a shit ton here. So, and I got extras for, I have no idea why. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the Scales of Fate. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's getting a 1 because it made me do that pun. I'm going to give this game. How does it compare to other deduction style 2-player games? Because there's this, there is Mantis Falls, there is Pagan. Pagan actually kind of has a deduction style game specifically for 2. Those are the only 2 that I can think of off the top of my head right now. Not counting, there are more bigger player count games. I'm gonna give Scales of Fate an 8. Wow, it's really making me do these fun little puzzle rhyme things. Yeah, I think Scales of Fate is a very solid 8. I do like the fact that it nails it right on the head for its deduction. I think the reason why it's not potentially getting a 9, like Pagan and Mantis Falls get like actually Mantis Falls got a 10 because it was the first 2-player deduction game. I guess 3, it could go up to 3. Mainly 2-player deduction game that I had ever played. And then Pagan is also it's a lot more in depth. The reason why Scales of Fate is not getting a 9 from me is mainly because of that. The almost the swinginess of the deduction, where you might have games where you get a lot of good info, and you might have games where you get none, and that could just be a little bit too much. But still, an 8 out of 10 is still a fantastic score. I really like it. It's a sexy ass game. Let me know if I would like Veiled Fate. I think Veiled Fate is like a high player count game, if I'm not mistaken, so it might not be one I would ever get a chance to play. But If it can be played at lower player counts, then great. If not, then I got Scales of Fate and Pillars of Fate. But yeah, 2 extremely solid 2-player games in the Veiled Fate series by Ivy Studios. They're knocking it out of the park. I love their 2-player games. I want to see more games from them like this. And yeah, that's it. So let me know what you think of Scales of Fate in the comments below. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.